I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the regular meeting of the Garden City Planning Commission. It's Thursday, March 9th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. First, I'd like everyone to stand to pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Be seated. Would the secretary take the roll call, please?
Chairperson May,
Here.
Commissioner Steenberg,
Here.
Commissioner Turnbull, Commissioner Walls,
Here.
Commissioner Kalidas, Commissioner Mativier, here, Commissioner King.
Okay, next item is approval of the agenda. If we could have a motion.
Make a motion. I'll second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the agenda. Any comments or corrections? Hearing none, take the roll, please.
Commissioner Steenberg,
Aye.
Commissioner Walls,
Aye.
Commissioner Mativier,
Aye.
Chairperson May.
Aye. Next, we need approval of the minutes for the regular meeting of January 12th, 2023.
Make a motion to approve the minutes from January 12th, 2023.
Second.
Any comments or corrections? Hearing none, take the roll, please.
Commissioner Mativier,
Aye.
Commissioner Steenberg,
Aye.
Commissioner Walls,
Aye.
Chairperson May.
Aye. Okay, the next item is public comment on non-agenda items only. This is for someone who wishes to comment on something that is not on our agenda tonight. If so, step up to the podium. I don't see anyone. I'll ask again if there's anyone who wishes to make a comment on a non-agenda item. Come forward to the podium and okay, seeing no one, we'll move on to the business items. First item, PPL 23-0004. It's a request for a special land use recommendation and site plan approval to establish a carryout restaurant at 27419 Warren Road in the C1 Local Business District. The first section will be special land use recommendation. And if we could start out with our consultant's report, please. Mr. Ortega?
Yes. Good evening, Commissioners. Before you is our review letter for this proposed application, so I'm going to be just summarizing some highlights from this review. So this site is located at the southwest corner of a Warren Inkster Roads. The site is 10,800 square feet in area. It has one existing one-story structure, which is approximately 50 feet wide by 30 feet deep. And the site has one curb cut onto Inkster Road, one curb cut onto Warren Road. And so while there is also an access drive across the rear of this site and leading onto the adjacent properties to the west, and it does function as an alley, technically this alley is located on individual private pieces of property. But it does function as such as an alley. So the applicant is proposing to utilize this building to operate a carry-out Mexican restaurant. Within the zoning ordinance, carry-out restaurants require special use approval in the C1 zoning district. So first, with regards to special land use comments, as I mentioned, I'll highlight some of the main issues. And the first issue we typically look at is whether the proposed use and how compatible it will be with adjacent uses. So this intersection at Warren Road is technically in 3 different municipalities, but it has been developed with a variety of commercial uses. The other corners have existing development which is similar or more intensive in development intensity than this proposed development. And as a carry-out restaurant, there will be intermittent levels of high traffic, but that's mainly going to be limited similar characteristics with this site, if not more, traffic generated as a result of the existing uses in the area. So we believe that the change in use from a standard retail location to a carryout restaurant will not result in a significant increase in activity on the site. Customers to carryout restaurants, typically you stay for a very minimal amount of time. So given the site's minimal change in use and the long-established commercial character of this intersection, we do believe the proposed use will be compatible with the existing adjacent uses. Another important factor to consider is compatibility with the master plan. The site and all properties fronting on Inkster Road, from this Warren Road intersection all the way down to James, then also the properties on Warren Road from Inkster westbound to all the way actually to Card Road are all designated as neighborhood commercial. The master plan defines neighborhood commercial as properties that should be consistent with a low intensity of convenience commercial uses that are compatible with the surrounding residential development. So given the low intensity of this proposed use and its general consistency with the description of this neighborhood commercial uses envisioned in the master plan text, we believe the proposed use would be compatible with the overall goal and vision of the city's master plan. We also take a look at whether this use would, how it would operate and be compatible with the adjacent properties just from a functional standpoint. The applicant has submitted a site plan that we'll get into in a moment, and that site plan indicates that all activities will be located on this private property itself, and it will not lead off onto adjacent property. The applicant is also proposing some additional site improvements. So we believe that because all activities for this use will be conducted on the subject site, that the proposed use will not interfere with any of the adjacent property. So there are some other things that we consider. The site will be adequately serviced by public utilities. Its impact on traffic should be minimal given the level of activity on the site and some other factors. So in the end, we do believe that the establishment of a carryout restaurant at this intersection of Warren and Inkster would provide a convenient food alternative to the adjacent residents. And we would recommend that the planning commission approve the carryout restaurant special land use. You can address the special land use or I can move into the site plan.
Is there any comment or question about the special land use section? All right, why don't we move on to the site plan then?
So, real briefly then, continuing these comments in the review letter, site plan review is required for any special land use. They have submitted a very detailed and professional site plan. The existing building is in compliance with all our zoning ordinance requirements. When it comes to parking, this use requires 8 off-street parking spaces based on the size of the customer area in the building and the number of employees. And the submitted site plan shows 11 parking spaces, and with one of these parking spaces being consistent with an ADA accessible parking requirement. When it comes to other additional site improvements like landscaping, the site itself is very tight, and so the applicant has not submitted a site plan. When I say by tight, I mean given the size of the building, the size of the parking lot, there are currently no other areas available for any type of additional landscaping enhancements. The parking configuration on the site plan shows that while functional, it provides the 11 parking spaces, but there's no means of adjusting it to allow for any additional landscaping. And the site does benefit from the fact that there are also landscape medians in the right-of-way of Inkster and Warren. So there will be some of those existing landscaping medians. So the majority of the site plan is consistent with the requirements of the zoning ordinance. The applicant is also proposing the construction of a dumpster enclosure. The site does not currently have one, so it will be enhanced by having that being constructed on site. The one issue we would point out is that there are no details on the site plan for any lighting, whether existing or proposed. So those details should be added. So in the end, when it comes to the site plan, we believe this project will result in the redevelopment of the vacant building and provide a new dining alternative for residents. The site plan is in substantial compliance with ordinance standards, so we would recommend the planning commission grant site plan approval contingent upon the submittal of a revised site plan to provide the lighting details.
Oh,
Any
is-
questions?
Well, why don't we hold our questions and comments until the end and allow the applicant to make his presentation at this time? Would the applicant come forward? Yes, you can both come up if you want. Introduce yourself, please.
My name is Muhammad Ali. I'm the owner and operator. This is also my partner.
Good evening. My name is Abraham Musa.
Okay. Did you have any comments or statements you'd like to make about your proposal?
Just a couple of statements. Like Mario mentioned, we're just trying to bring something to the community, you know, some, like a good, just to carry out some, we specialize in Mexican street food, so bringing something different. And we're also mostly targeting, like, we want to help out first responders. That's why, like, Garden City, the hospital is right next door. My partner over here is also a Dearborn Heights officer, so we're going to be targeting first responders to be given out to that. And besides, like, to help out the community, just, you know, just bring something different to the neighborhood. Like Mario mentioned, it is vacant right now, so we're going to be giving it a big facelift, and hopefully in the future it's going to be really good for everyone.
I think that intersection I pass by almost every night I'm working. I think an uplift in a business over there will be beneficial for the community and the three municipalities where it's Garden City as well as us and Westland. So I think it would, you know, you're gonna have lighting over there, you're gonna have traffic of civilians and also first responders. I think it will deter, if anything, it would be safer for the community, deter people who don't necessarily visit that for a community or a business aspect, will deter them away from the city. I think it would be good bringing good money for the city, for taxes and points like that as well.
Okay, thank you. Was there anything else?
No, that would be it.
Okay, well, you can have a seat. If we have any questions, we'll get back with you.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to open this for comments from the public. Is there anyone here who wishes to comment on this application? If so, you can come forward to the podium and introduce yourself and sign in. No one wishes to come up to comment? Okay, seeing no one, we'll move on. Does the secretary have any written communications regarding this?
We did not receive any written communications on this agenda item.
Okay, then I'll close the public hearing and we'll move on to Planning Commission discussion with recommendations. So, does anyone have a comment or a question about this proposal?
Nothing at this time.
Well, we need to make a recommendation as far as the special land use is concerned, and then we need to decide on the site plan review also. So let's start out with the special land use. Does someone care to make a motion for recommendation to council on special land use?
I'll make a motion to approve the special land use.
To recommend approval?
Yeah.
Okay. And second? Okay, we have a motion and second to approve the special land use, or to make a recommendation to approve. And is there any comments on the motion or discussion? Seeing none, would you take the roll, please?
Commissioner Walls?
Aye.
Commissioner Mativier?
Aye.
Commissioner Steenberg?
Aye.
Chairperson May?
Aye. Okay, next, we need site plan review.
I think the only issue with that was the lighting, right?
Pardon me?
According to Mario, the only issue with that was the lighting. We just needed specs on the lighting.
Yeah, just submittal, if, just showing the existing lighting, and if they propose any new lighting, we just wanna make sure any new lighting is shielded and directed down, this kind of stuff that we can take care of. If you're okay with that administratively, just because we wanna make sure that not add any glare incidents at that intersection. But all new lighting is consistent with those things.
Do we insist on a photometric plan for that?
It's up to you, with regards to that, the zoning ordinance specifically states the location, height, and to make sure that it's not, any proposed new lighting does not negatively impact the area.
Oh, we've had some issues in the past where we have, lighting spilling over the boundaries of the site
Yes, that's
in different sites, and, I believe a photometric plan would probably, take care of that situation before it occurs. Mr. Steenberg?
Yeah, in this particular, normally, I believe that'd be a great way to go, except in this particular instance, the R1 is quite some distance from this location. Everything is pretty, the R1 is pretty well separated by other buildings and parking lots and whatnot here. So I think
Well, it's not only the R1, but we don't want lights glaring out into traffic either.
That's true. The thing I was gonna, overall, are we comfortable with this, the amount of description and detail on this site plan in general? Not just the photometric. I know I have a breakout description here of the dumpster enclosure.
We don't really have any elevations.
We don't have any views from the various north, south, east, west, or
Right.
any
And we don't, right, we don't know what the building's gonna look like when they're done with it.
No idea at all. I've heard about improvements, but I see nothing proposed here, be it artistic or actual.
Oh, maybe the applicant could fill us in on their intention as far as the outside of the building?
So the outside of the building just gotta be, we're gonna sandblast everything, because as you can see, if you go there, the paint is already chipping off. And we're actually working with a local artist that's just gonna do a mural, and just on one side of the wall, but the rest is just gonna be like a flat type of paint. So not that much with design on the outside, just like plain color. And regards with the light, I do agree with it, like being shining out to traffic. So that's why we're going to be putting like a 90-degree shining down onto the parking lot, so it won't reach out there, because I do agree with that. It is pretty dangerous for someone driving onto Inkster or Warren if it hits them. So with the lighting, we're gonna have that pretty controlled, and that's about it with the design. Like I said, just one side's gonna be a mural, and the rest is probably max like 2 colors, but that's about it.
All right, thank you. Would we be satisfied in letting Mr. Ortega handle that administratively?
Sure. Are you
So-
comfortable with that and the amount of detail that has been presented here?
Yes, because, speaking with the applicant, they didn't indicate they weren't gonna do anything to change the window size or any type of architectural elements of it. And in my letter, I went into a little bit more detail, the fact that it is, it's a clean, simple building, but it does use brick. So hearing that they'll be, maintaining the brick through sandblasting and painting, I think that's a very good way of maintaining the quality of brick, because that'll seal it, prevent it from being exposed, the water exposure to negatively impact it. And once again, the main idea that they're not going to change any of the wall openings or enhance that makes it pretty straightforward, I would say.
Basically painting and the addition of a mural too.
Correct.
So maybe, I think maybe we should have an idea of what the mural is going to look like.
Yeah, that would be nice. Colors, mural.
I mean,
This is the
I mean, that's on a main intersection, right on the corner of a main intersection, so a lot of people are gonna see it. So
Sure.
it would be nice if it looked nice, and I'm sure your intention is to make it look great. But, as long as you're comfortable, checking it, making sure that it's compatible with existing buildings in the area, and that it will be, in good taste, I think we could probably
I'd be
accept
comfortable
that.
with that.
And, also on checking the lighting.
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely.
Okay,
Anything else?
no, I'm
Okay.
good.
Well, does somebody want to make a motion, to include those two items?
I'll make a motion to include the two items we just discussed with final approval, going to Mario, for that and the remainder of the site plan,
That's for approval of the site plan.
for approval, yes.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Is Secretary clear on that motion?
Yep, let me read it back to you.
Okay.
So this is a motion to approve the site plan contingent upon the applicant submitting a revised site plan, including a photometric plan, and planning consultant Ortega administratively granting final site plan approval. To make sure it's compliant with.
And also on building, paint and appearance. Considering the mural.
To make sure building paint and appearance complies with
Complies
ordinance
with,
standards.
area standards and compatible with, the existing businesses.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments, questions?
No.
Go ahead and take roll.
Commissioner Steenberg,
Aye.
Commissioner Mativier,
Aye.
Commissioner Walls,
Aye.
Chairperson May.
Aye. Okay, your site plan has been approved. The special land use recommendation is to the city council, so it's up to them to make that decision. And I assume it would be at the next council meeting, or?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. So if you'd like to attend the next council meeting to hear that, you're welcome to. And in either case, you can contact Mr. Ortega for any more details and how to proceed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Good luck.
Good luck with your business.
When do you anticipate opening?
We're looking at the end of April,
Oh, well, that's quick. That's good.
just right before summer.
Looking
Okay.
forward to it.
Good luck.
We're looking forward to having you.
Okay. Next item, PPL 23-0002 is a request for a special land use recommendation and site plan approval to establish a carryout restaurant at 33425 Ford Road in the C1 Local Business District. We can start out with Mr. Ortega's report.
Yes, sir. So this site is located at the southwest corner of Ford Road and Farmington Road. The site is located at a lot that's totaling approximately 23,850 square feet. Excuse me. And currently there's one existing one-story structure. The structure itself totals 7,200 square feet in the area. The existing structure is actually a multi-tenant building, and it's currently occupied by 4 separate businesses. And then the applicant is proposing to occupy the unit on the far east end of the building, and that unit is approximately 900 square feet in area. As indicated, the applicant is proposing to operate a carry-out ice cream restaurant, and per the zoning ordinance, once again, carry-out restaurants in the C1 do require the special land use review and approval process. Looking for special land use consideration, looking at compatibility with adjacent uses. This is the Ford Road corridor, which is the primary commercial corridor within the city, with all properties developed for commercial use. All properties to the north, east, and west adjacent to this site are developed and occupied by commercial uses, with slight variations in their levels of activity. The majority of uses are retail in nature, with some food service establishments located either on the north side of Ford Road, which technically is in Westland, or several blocks to the east or west along Ford Road that are located in the city of Garden City. So while there are, also to point out, adjacent residences to the south of this site, this condition, as we know, is prevalent along the south side and north side of the Ford Road corridor. Property owners are aware of a higher level of activity related to their proximity to Ford Road when compared to those residents who might be located further south and further deeper into the residential neighborhood. The zoning ordinance does attempt to mitigate any impacts from the commercial businesses onto residents through the various landscaping and screening requirements. And this site already currently has a 6-foot-high tall masonry screening wall along that property line shared with the residences to the south. So we believe that this change in use to a carryout restaurant from a standard retail will not result in a significant increase in activity on the site. The site will not be designed based on the site plan submitted to extend customers' visits through the use of any kind of outdoor seating area. This will be carryout only. And so typically, their stays will be a minimal amount of time for customers to business. So given this minimal change in intensity and the well-established commercial corridor character for Ford Road, we do believe the proposed use will be compatible with the adjacent existing uses. And then similarly, looking at the master plan, once again, this site and all adjacent properties fronting on Ford Road in this portion of the city are all designated as neighborhood commercial. Within the master plan, just to familiarize us again, neighborhood commercial is defined and described as being development which is consistent of a low intensity quality, such as convenient commercial uses that are typically more compatible with surrounding residential development. So once again, it's this level, given the level of intensity of the business of this proposed use, and its general consistency with the description of neighborhood commercial designation of the master plan, we do believe this proposed use would also be compatible in this location with the city's master plan. And then finally, as similar to our previous case, the site will be adequately serviced by public utilities. This type of use is not intended, it does not need any additional utility service on a standard commercial operation. Given the modest size of the Pro's Ice Cream Restaurant, you should have no impact on traffic on Ford Road, given the high volume, not only of the existing Ford Road traffic, but the fact that it's designed to handle the highest volume capable. And with regards to those other special use characteristics, as I mentioned, it's very consistent with the other uses in the area. So we do believe the establishment of this carryout restaurant in this portion of the Ford Road corridor would provide a convenient food alternative to the adjacent residents. So we recommend the planning commission advise that the city council to approve the carryout restaurant special land use request.
Okay. Can we now have the presentation by the applicant?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ahmad Kaboot.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the plan is to open up an ice cream shop over there in the area, hoping to service all the community surrounding the place on Ford Road on the south side.
Okay. This would be strictly carryout?
Yes, and just like in the store, people eat and take out. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Did you ever have any other comments about your proposal that you'd like to tell us about right now?
No, I think Mr. Ortega covered everything.
Okay then. Well, thank you. We'll possibly get back to you when we get down to the site plan, if we have any questions.
Okay,
Thank you.
you will.
Now we'll open the public hearing. Is anyone's here that wishes to make a comment on this application? Raise your hand, come forward to the podium. No one wants to make a comment? Okay. We'll close the, well,
To
before
the chair.
that, do you have any written communications?
We
No.
didn't, we had no written communications for this item.
Okay, no written communications, no public comments, so we'll close the public hearing. And open it up to the Planning Commission discussion about recommendation. Do we have any comments or discussion from the commission?
Nope.
Is this all we have for a site plan?
I think we're talking about the special land use right now.
I believe so.
That's after
Is
this.
this it?
Yeah,
It's
we're
not a
not
site
proposing
plan.
any changes to the exterior of the building?
No, I think it might be a similar situation that you might say, we did discuss something about a mural as well, I think at one point, am I correct, or?
I'm sorry, what was
Was there an instance of potentially having a mural as well? A mural?
On the outside of your building? No?
Sorry.
Okay.
I'm too confused there.
The other building,
The other mural was one. He's the one that told me, not Ms. Jones.
right. Okay. So you don't need to make any improvements on the outside at all?
It's just a signage that can be changed,
Just the signage?
that's it,
Okay. And you'll have to apply for signage approval for that?
of course.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's, if there's no comments, let's go ahead and make our motion for the recommendation on the special land use before we go to the site plan.
I'll make a motion to recommend to council for the special land use.
Approval?
Yeah, approval, sorry.
Second.
Any comments or questions about the motion? Hearing none, take the roll.
Commissioner Walls?
Aye.
Commissioner Steenberg?
Aye.
Commissioner Mativier?
Aye.
Chairperson May?
Aye. Okay, site plan review. Mr. Ortega?
Yes. So, we have a site plan that was submitted in front of you. Based on this information and on our familiarity with the existing site, the existing principal structure is in compliance with all our dimensional requirements of the ordinance. We're looking at parking requirements. As a multi-tenant commercial building, we do have a classification as a shopping center, which just means it has a specific parking standard based on the floor area. So the overall site requires 23 off-street parking spaces, and there are 37 spaces provided. So based on our ordinance requirements, that it is overparked, if you will, meeting those requirements. We did want to note that based on the 37 spaces, the site must provide one van-sized ADA accessible parking space and one standard ADA accessible parking space. The site plan in front of you does not show the location of the existing ADA accessible space. I did have a chance to today visit the site, but in the past, I believe there might have been one ADA accessible site, parking space on site, but to be consistent with the ordinance standards, the site plan should show where those ADA are, and I believe it would require some restriping of the existing lot to make sure that it provided the correct striped landing, loading zone for the ADA accessible spaces.
Does that serve the entire strip or just this business?
It's for the entire strip, because what we do is we look at the entire parking lot, and then based on federal standards, from 25 to 50 parking spaces in the parking lot require 2 ADA accessible, and of those ADA accessible, 1 must be a van size. And basically, that means that the size of the loading zone, or the striped area in which people can get in and out of vehicles, changes from 5 feet to 8 feet. We have an 8-foot wide parking space that says that it's a So we would recommend that any site plan approval be contingent upon submitting the designation of ADA requirements. And then similarly with our other site, when it comes to landscaping and other possibilities of site improvements, the entire site is either occupied by the building or by a hard surface. In this particular instance, not only do they have to deal with the width of Ford Road, but I believe there's also an additional lane directly in front of this property for a dedicated right turn onto Farmington. So that reduces the amount of area available even further. And that's why, unfortunately, in this case, the sidewalk is right up against the travel lane, and there's no real method of the means to provide any kind of improvement in that instance. So the only other additional item, similarly to previous review, is that the site plan, such as it is, doesn't have any lighting details. So in the end, we will recommend site plan approval due to the nature of this use and the nature of the proposed projects. Just summarize plan that shows the ADA accessible parking and any detail about existing and proposed lighting.
Okay,
Question.
yes.
So, in looking at the site plan, we're gonna view this as a shopping center and look at the site in its entirety for striping and ADA compliance and
Yes.
potential landscaping and lighting? I see.
Okay. Does the applicant care to make any more comments about the site plan?
Regarding the ADA, there are two ADAs, they're not on the site plan, but I remember they're like on each end of the whole space. One on this end, one on this end, that's what I saw when I was like walking around with it.
Is the striping visible?
Yes.
That would need to be confirmed, I guess.
It's like
Well, they'd have
on
to
the
submit it,
floor.
after you just identify their location on the site plan, and then you do a site visit to make sure that they're in compliance with the ordinance requirements. And if not, they just have to be repainted.
Just a matter of restriping.
Restriping. That'd be something you could work out with the property owner to determine who's responsible for that. But, because it's under for review, you want to make sure that it's consistent with ordinance requirements.
Okay, and are you proposing any changes to the lighting on the outside of the building?
The lighting?
The lighting, yes.
No. Like,
Exterior lighting in the parking lot or on the building itself?
I believe the sign should like give enough light, and there's like the lights, there's already two lights under the store, the front entrance, which they're not on in the meantime, but when we operate, they're gonna be on, and they're gonna give some lighting to the business, the entrance area.
Okay, well, your site plan's a little bit thin in that it doesn't show us any of those details or the exterior of the building, anything like that, so we have no way of knowing what the lighting is. Do we need to provide some additional detail on the plans as far as the lighting and the building exterior?
Yes, I would recommend that, because mainly we can show the location of the existing fixtures and look at, see whether they're in compliance as well.
Because there's not going to be any changes.
Right, so, but it would just be,
Just verifying what they have currently and making sure that it's up to code.
correct.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Was there anything else you wanted to say? Okay. Well, let's go on to the public hearing for the site plan.
To the chair.
Pardon me?
So the public hearing is for the special land.
Just for the
use,
special, not
special
for the
land,
site plan?
Not for site plan.
Okay, we don't need that. All right. Moving on then. Planning Commission discussion. Do we have any comments or discussion from the planning commission regarding the site plan? Commissioner Steenberg?
Yes. In the past, we've come to expect a great deal more on our site plans than what this plan currently reveals. And I'm not sure if we have a hole in the process here whereby this is being looked at as a shopping center, and this gentleman is proposing to use one section of that shopping center, not its entirety. But we have what we're calling a site plan here that gives us zero information. This is not acceptable as a site plan, in my opinion, because it doesn't provide us with the necessary information we need to make a decision. You have a familiarity with the site, having written up your report here, and we have questions about the condition of the dumpster enclosure. We have questions about potentially with the sidewalk possibly, the lighting and the striping in the parking lot, especially as it pertains to ADA compliance. I don't know how I could make a decision on this unless we just put the whole thing in your hands, because I have nothing to base a decision on here other than what you've written. I looked at the site several days ago, and I was expecting something more than what we received here. That's all.
So, just to have that discussion, so the issue in this particular case is because it's a multi-tenant building, and the building back when it was constructed, in theory, did receive site plan approval. Because of the age of our community, some of the buildings did have to go back pretty far, when they were initially constructed. So the site plans on file at that time, believe it or not, are still actually valid until the building actually goes away. So the issue here is that the special use does require a site plan. It's a matter of determining to how extent and how much detail one particular tenant must be required to improve the site up to modern standards. For example, in this case, if this was actually zoned C2, then it would be a use permitted by right. It would go through the commercial certificate of occupancy requirements. And then I would be looking at it for these particular issues, just making sure those glaring issues that would hinder the function of the site, and then making sure that the applicant addressed with the property owner ways to bring them up in greater compliance with the code. Because as we know, a lot of our existing sites are not in compliance with the code. They're legally non-conforming because we have new modern bank standards.
Sure.
Than most with them. So it is in your purview to whether to accept this as a sufficient enough of a plan for this particular use, or if you feel that it's necessary for the entire site to become into full compliance with the standard, with the zoning ordinance, and have a completely updated site plan. It's just, typically with this multi-tenant situation, we allow for a more modest plan, mainly because of the substantial costs involved in a brand new, fully funded, stamp and seal drawings for multi-tenant building versus single tenant. So it's
Yeah,
tough.
it would seem to me that, there are three areas of possible deficiency here. The parking, the ADA accessible parking, the lighting, and the dumpster enclosure.
Right.
Other than that, I see no real changes with the building, and unless we're going to say that the parking lot needs to be resurfaced or something. And we haven't even talked about that. But I think probably if you're willing to accept responsibility for checking out those 3 items, that if everyone's agreeable to that, we could move on, since he's going to be occupying just a small fraction of the total strip.
So I'd be willing to do that, because it's what we consistently do on other sites that we do in new C of O, so this is
Yeah.
consistent with that standard, except being higher, that we would require this, the plan submitted to have those notes added and updated, to address those 3 issues.
Okay. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, it seems like an awful lot to ask of a individual tenant in a building that he be responsible for the entirety of the shopping center. So if you're comfortable reviewing the things that Fred talked about, those are of most concern to me as well. Then we can put the final in your hands and move forward with this.
Okay, well, do you want to make a motion?
Sure. I'll make a motion to approve and send this to council.
No,
Or you-
we approve this one.
Oh, this one is all us. Make a motion to approve pending on Mario's review of
Just
the
contingent on those 3 items.
3 items.
Is there support?
I'll second.
Second. Would you like me to read the 3 items back,
Okay.
just so we're?
Sure.
Okay, so the 3 items are the applicant submitting a revised site plan that includes the location for 1 van-sized and 1 standard-size ADA accessible off-street parking space, each designated in compliance with ordinance standards, details for all existing and proposed lighting, including the location, height, fixture type, and light levels of all light sources, and the dumpster enclosure being repaired or replaced as necessary.
Okay, to be determined administratively.
Yeah, with planning consultant authorized to handle final approval administratively.
Okay. Any questions or comments on the motion? Take the roll, please.
Commissioner Steenberg?
Aye.
Commissioner Mativier?
Aye.
Commissioner Walls?
Aye.
Chairperson May?
Aye. With those 3 items, you're approved for your site plan. The mayor and council have to approve the special land use. That should probably happen at the next council meeting, and you can contact Mr. Ortega for the details. So thank you, sir, and good luck with your business.
Good luck.
Okay, next item. PPL 23-001, request to rezone the lot at the northwest corner of Pardo Avenue and Shatka Road, more commonly known as 30712 Pardo, from R1 Single Family Residential to conditional R3 Multiple Family Residential. We'll start out with presentation from Mr. Ortega.
So before us tonight is this proposal to conditionally rezone a piece of property. The site is 144 feet wide by 147 feet deep, totaling approximately 0.49 acres, and is currently occupied by a vacant 1-story single-family residential structure. The site, as noted, is currently zoned R1 single-family residential, and the applicant is proposing to conditionally rezone the property to R3 multifamily residential. This would be to allow for a building with a maximum of 12 townhouse-style units. As a part of the conditional process, the rezoning process, the applicant is also requesting for a reduction in the front and side yard setbacks in compensation for and to allow for the construction of a higher quality designed structure. So our review letter goes over the existing conditions on the site. We have your existing uses, as I mentioned, it's vacant. It's currently a vacant building. To the north is a commercial residential mixed-use building with commercial on the bottom and resident apartments that has been recently refurbished. The applicant does own that building, and they have refurbished that building that was vacant for a long time. It was I know it was a camera store, I forget the name of the camera store. It was
Foxhole.
Thank you. So that was the previous use. Now there are 9 brand-new apartments, well, completely renovated apartments, and there will be two commercial tenants in the currently occupying the site. One is, I believe, has begun his occupation, and the front building will be, front unit is going through the CFO process to establish a hair salon in that front unit. So that's to the north of this site. To the east of this site, it's zoned multifamily R3, but it is a single-family residence currently. To the south is a single-family residence, and to the west is a single-family residence. That property to the east and west, even though they're single-family residents, they're planned as mixed use. And so it's only the property to the south that is a single-family now and is planned as to remain single-family. So when it comes to rezoning, we do look at several different issues listed in the site plan, in the zoning ordinance. The first being if this proposed amendment or rezoning is in accordance with the basic tenet and purpose of the zoning ordinance. So, since this would be one of a handful of conditional rezonings, I'm just going to go over the process for everyone. So with a standard rezoning, the city must consider all the permitted uses and special land uses that could be developed on the site and determine if future development will be compatible with the adjacent uses. So, but with a conditional rezoning, the applicant voluntarily proposes a set of conditions on the site's development that restricts it to a particular development style and type in order to achieve compatibility with the adjacent uses. So rather than being given the right to develop a site for any of the permitted and special uses within the zoning district, the applicant may only use a site for the use or uses they list within a conditional rezoning. A legally binding conditional rezoning agreement will be signed by the property owner and the city if approved, and then this agreement will be recorded at Wayne County that specifies how the site will be developed. And most importantly, if at any point in the future the site is no longer being utilized for the proposed condition of use, then the site must automatically revert to the previous single-family residential district. So as noted, the applicant is proposing to conditionally rezone the site to the R3 multifamily residential, and then only utilize the site for a 12-unit townhouse-style development. The applicant, as part of his submittal, has included a rendering and a plot plan that includes a detailed elevation for the proposed units. These units, this one building with 12 townhouses in them, each unit would be between 1,000 and 1,200 square feet in area. The proposed building is positioned along Pardo Street, creating an attractive street wall, with the parking is going to be located to the rear of the building and adjacent to the alley. The building floor plan results in the creation of individual townhouse facades that replicate the architectural features of single-family homes. As shown, the units will have their own private individual entrance door, 6 on the Pardo side, 6 facing the parking lot to the rear. Each unit will be a 2-story unit and then the building itself will have peaked roofs, similar to other adjacent residences, and the facade will utilize high-quality building materials that we believe are compatible with adjacent single-family residences in the area. So, for this type of building to be constructed, the applicant is requesting a modification to the ordinance setback requirements as a condition of this rezoning. Rather than the standard 30-foot front yard setback and 20-foot side yard setbacks, the applicant is proposing a 26 front foot yard rather than 30, so 26 instead of 30, and then a 10-foot side yard along Shaka and on the west side instead of the 20-foot requirements. So the applicant is also proposing to provide 2 parking spaces per unit. That is a requirement in compliance with standards. However, the applicant is asking to not provide the guest parking that our ordinance currently requires, which in this case would be an additional 5 parking spaces. So, so rather than, so instead of 29 parking spaces, there would be 24 parking spaces on the site. So just an additional note, the characteristic of the conditional rezoning is that if the site was rezoned as a standard R3 development, it could be developed just as a standard apartment building. The zoning ordinance has no design requirements for multifamily buildings, you know, so that could even allow for something like a flat roof, concrete wall building, could be developed with a parking lot located in the non-required front yard of the site. That is not what's being proposed, and conditional rezoning would allow for the development of the type of building and the units and the density and the characteristics that I just outlined. As part of, that's what's been submitted with the applicant's application. So these proposed townhouse developments would create, we believe, a much more attractive use than a standard apartment building, and one which is much more compatible with the adjacent uses than once again, than a standard apartment. The townhouse style unit would provide a new type of housing alternative in the city, given that standard apartments that are currently offered. The proposed condition of rezoning would result in development that is in accordance with the basic intents and purposes of the zoning ordinance. So in addition to this character, just outlining the project and going over how it is compatible with the zoning ordinance, we also looked at whether the proposed amendment would further the comprehensive planning goals of the city. So one of the goals of the city's 2017 master plan is to promote a high quality of life through economic development by improving housing in the neighborhoods of the city. And one of these objectives of this goal listed under this is to promote alternative housing types such as attached single-family condominiums and senior housing units. So given that that is listed in our master plan, the proposed condition rezoning would allow for the construction of these new town-style housing units within the city. In addition to the master plan, looking at it in addition to the master plan's future land use map, it designates this site as mixed use. Property to the north, east, and west are also designated for mixed use. And then the master plan states that that category, mixed use category, multiple family housing types are permitted within that multi-family mixed use designation. And that would include attached townhomes. So given the fact that the proposed condition of rezoning would result in the development of a townhouse building, the request for rezoning would further the comprehensive planning goals as stated and that are included within the city's master plan. There are some other issues to consider, some of them aren't relevant in terms of the standards that are listed in our zoning ordinance. Like for example, will the amendment result in exclusionary zoning? It would not, because this would allow for a variety of housing characteristics. And then, once again, we look at whether it's consistent with zoning classification of surrounding land. I noted the existing zoning districts to the north, it's C2, to the east, it's R3. We know for the rest of the block on Pardo, the north side of Pardo is all R3. And then on Pardo, further west, past this block, all those properties are zoned R3 as well. So we would believe this proposed conditional rezoning would be consistent with the zoning pattern of the city. So in the end, conditional rezoning would allow for the creation of a new type of housing unit that will diversify the housing choices for residents. The proposed townhouse building would exceed the minimum requirements of the zoning ordinance as far as design, style, and character. So we would advise the planning commission to recommend to city council the approval of the proposed rezoning of the site from R1 to conditional R3, with the condition that the site shall only be developed for the 12-unit townhouse style building. I can take any questions at the appropriate time.
Well, why don't we hold our questions until later on? And right now, let's hear from the applicant. Sir, you care to tell us about your proposal?
Good evening, Commissioners.
Good evening.
Mr. Ortega, how are you? My name is Sam Fadlala, and I represent the ownership. This is my wife, Nadia. And my glasses, I'm sorry. I just want to give you a little background on what we do, my wife and I. We are real estate professional. We're developers for over the past 25 years. So in the past 6 years, I had the privilege of serving my community on the Planning Commission for Dearborn Heights. Just recently retired from there, thank God. So, and my wife currently serves on the Zoning Board of Appeals for Dearborn Heights. So we're kind of familiar with this process works, and we appreciate what you guys do. You know, we're always blamed for the good things and the bad things, but we take it. So during the past few years, while I was on the board for Dearborn Heights, we have accomplished a lot of things, including revitalizing the Ford Road corridor, stretching all the way to Inkster, as Mr. Ortega was seeing the shopping centers, and you can blame us for the Starbucks over there and all the Chipotle by Target. So we did all that. We take credit for it. My wife was a long resident of Dearborn, of Garden City. She grew up on Merriman, 6237 Merriman, and when we got married, she moved to Dearborn Heights with me. So recently, she decided she wants to invest back in Garden City since her family still live here. So we acquired a building on Ford Road, the apartment building that Mr. Ortega had mentioned. If you can show them pictures.
I'm sure you've already seen it.
Yeah. So we took this rundown building that's,
Sorry, it's not in color.
yeah.
Thank you.
The kids ran the ink out, so we're just like.
Put it into the record.
So we purchased this building, and it was vacant for 25 years, and we renovated it into modern-style condo living, and we renovated the 2 front stores. We occupied the whole 9 units with good tenants, God willing. So now we have a security system guy that operates one of the stores in the bottom, and we just relocated upper-class salon from Dearborn Heights. We've taken them from Dearborn Heights and bringing them over here. So they're going to be opening probably next month or so. They're working on their C of O. So last year, we had the opportunity to purchase that house that's right behind the building, and with the vision of doing something with it. And it's an old, rundown home that's condemned. We recently donated it to the fire department so they can do a dry-on on it in May, hopefully. So we're going to take that house down, and we planning on transforming it into modern-style, upper-style condo, townhouses. After talking with the planner and the city officials, come to find out that the current zoning does not allow for modern-style living, so townhouses. The current zoning of that specific property, even though some of them are zoned R3 and those are apartments, we don't want to do any apartments. So we're looking to do something nice in this area. So the recommendation was, why don't you do townhouses? Even though the cost is higher, but it would work for us, so it will, because we will have the apartment building in the front and these one in the back. We do property management, we manage our own properties, so we know what we're doing here. So what we're asking for is the rezoning of this property to R3 conditional. We don't want a straight R3 because I know that would allow us to do anything, but since we want to do townhouses, we're set on that. We want R3 conditional just to build there. And in order to get the density, we need to shrink the setback in order to build 12 units there. Otherwise, it won't make economical sense. So we're asking for the setback to be reduced from Pardo on the south from 30 feet to only 26 feet, that's 4 feet short. And from the side, east and west, from 20 feet to 10 feet. So this will allow us to build 6 unit facing Pardo and 6 unit facing the back alley, which is our parking lot, and we'll have access through the alley. So there will be like combined building together. So let me see what else I have here, my notes. we supplied you some kind of like rendering, just take a look at. It's not an official site plan because that becomes costly. We want to go through the initial process first. I want to thank you for your vision and your support, and looking forward to working with you. I appreciate all your help. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
This is kind of like, you have a copy of that? This is a video copy.
Yeah.
This is the parking lot in the back. This is our existing building right now. We have renovated everything in there. And we're proposing the building right here. This facing part of 6 units, facing the parking lot 6 unit. We have an exit over here, and we have the right to exit through the alley. So we control both
You're-
sides here. And as for you mentioned the guest parking, the city side street allows for street parking. So there's a big stretch here of 140 feet by
47.
147, so that's a big stretch of corner lot that allows for guest parking if needed.
Can you turn that around so we can see it?
Yeah, I think so.
Feel free to come up and
Okay.
look at it if you'd like.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your presentation. Now I'd like to open this up for the public hearing. If anyone here wishes to speak on this, come up and give us your name and sign in on the sheet, please.
I'm Jean Ward, this is Howard Ward, my husband.
And good evening, thank you.
Hi.
Good evening.
We are residents just to the west of this property.
We're the
The
adjoining.
house immediately to the west?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
where they have the adjoining lot there.
Yeah.
Our house is. So we bought the house 5 years ago, and believing that that was going to be a single-family residence next to us. We've got 7 grandchildren that come over and run the yard and have a great time. And the thought of having the apartment complex there does not sound very nice at all. In addition to noise and dumpsters and additional rats in the area, does not sound good. We already have to deal with, when we moved in, we found that rats run around, and we were told it was because of the dumpsters that are behind the alley where the businesses are, and there are dumpsters back there. We don't want any more dumpsters. So that's how we feel about it. We would have to also probably build a privacy fence so that we could feel safe about our kids.
Well, I believe if this project went through, that, if I'm not mistaken, that there would have to be a 4.5-foot wall separating the project from the residential
Concrete
property
masonry
next door.
structure.
Is that,
Masonry wall?
Yeah.
is that shown on the drawing?
No.
No, just a point of clarification for everyone. So this is the rezoning process.
Okay.
So, if this were to be approved, then the applicant still has to go through the site plan review process. So at that point in time, all these specific details would be required. So, but yes, any standards in our zoning ordinance that provides for screening and buffering between single-family residential and adjacent multifamily residential have to be constructed.
Okay, because I wasn't aware that my part or my house was zoned for multifamily either. I thought it was,
Yours
The
isn't.
entire block
Yours is not.
is
Okay.
zoned single-family.
Okay.
It's just planned for mixed use.
okay,
Yeah, this is future planning, not current.
okay. I just taken aback with all the new, because this is my first commission.
I understand.
Yeah, thank you very much for the clarification.
Every 5 years, the state requires us to write down a projected outlook of what we would like to see happen in the city moving forward.
I hear the master plan.
And part of the last several, probably the last 4 for 20 years, I've been here over 20, have been to improve the housing stock and the overall housing options in the city, such as townhouses, such as more upscale apartments, such as condominiums and things of this nature. In doing that, we changed the zoning, and when we did that 5-year review, it brought in, I believe it was 18 or 21 site plan condominiums over in the industrial park.
Okay.
On land that had sat vacant for over 30 years. And not only did they build very beautiful site plan condominiums that filled up instantly, so that the need was there, but they also took a parcel of land directly across the street and converted it into a high-quality athletic field for soccer. And so these are the type of things, when we look at these 5-year plans, we look at what can we improve in the city? And then we put that in a projection. And those are things that we strive for, to try and make the city constantly improve.
Currently, your property's not zoned for that, but the future
could.
land use, it could be at some time changed if that happened to come up. You did mention apartments, though, and these, what they're proposing aren't apartments, but
I
townhouses.
see that the townhouses, I mean, they're multifamily dwellings.
That's true.
Yes.
And
I
the,
just wanted to clarify, there is a little distinction there between apartments and,
I had a townhouse in Westland, so I know the difference.
okay.
the
Did you have anything else?
I think we're just voicing our concerns at this time.
Okay, well, I'm glad you did. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to come up? And
Stacy Carefotis on Dawson. Thank you for coming to our city and trying to revamp things. We appreciate that. My only question is, are these, like the condominiums you just mentioned, those were for sale and are owned by one person or one family. Are these rentals or are they for sale to be bought?
Those are not condos, they're townhouses. It's like a single family home that attached with the other.
Right, but are they
side.
for
So
sale or they're
Most
rentals?
likely, they're probably rental for now or for sale. We don't know what the future holds.
Okay.
I mean, keep in mind, these gonna be upper scale, modern look, and they're gonna cost a lot of money. So we're looking at the city average, what would cost to build this, each unit, and what's the sale price, what's the trend, what the comparables are right now. In today's market, the comps are not supporting this amount to sell it. Let's say they're gonna be sold for $300,000. They're not worth 300 right now. So what we're gonna do, we might just keep it in our rental portfolio for the next year or so, till the market goes back up. Then we can sell it to single family residents, and we have home ownership in that. So
Okay.
just like regular residents.
That was my only question. Thank you.
thank you. Yes, sir.
Name's
Give us
John.
your name and sign in, please.
Okay, John Murray, Lather Street.
Would you sign in on the sheet, please?
Yep. Yes. Part O from what, Merriman to Harrison, isn't there really a lot of apartment complexes?
There's
And
several.
what we have there is you have a floor plan with 4 different units. What this gentleman and his wife's thinking of is building townhouses, correct?
Right,
And they're gonna be rental properties.
possibly. He said they could be for sale at a later date, and they might rent them to start out.
But they will be for residential use only.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. So my question is these partition walls that are where you have the R3s to an R1, there's a wall that has to be put in there for noise and stuff like that.
Yes.
How does that get enforced and who maintains them?
The property owner has to maintain it. It's a masonry wall, so it's not a fence that's gonna fall down in a couple of years. but with the site plan approval, that process is where that would be required.
Because I like the design, it's a break up from what we actually have in town. I think it'd be an asset. So I would suggest you support it, please.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak on this proposal? Yes, sir, come on up.
Evening.
Good evening.
Dwayne Knoll, 30831 Pardo Street. Nice rendering. I think what he's got proposed there for that site is a little large. He's asking for a setback to Pardo, and he's asking for a setback on Shatka. And I think that's, yeah, I just think there's too much going to go in on that corner. We've lived there our whole life, and there's been a lot of traffic on that road because when the light goes out at Merriman. So there are times when that road gets pretty busy, being the first street south of Ford. So I think I'd like to see a little less of buildings. Got a great rendering, looks great, but you're going to see some problems with the parking in and out of the neighborhood. So I just think it's too much for that particular corner. Looks great. I can see the money coming into the city, but I think that for that particular corner, there's just too much going in on there. Got a lot of parking in the alley, and then you're going to end up flowing it over to the front street. So that's my thought on this situation.
Okay, well, thank you, sir.
Yep. Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak? Yes.
Additional comment.
One more time?
This dwelling is, I mean, it's nice rendering, but it's gonna cost much. What's it gonna do to my property value when it goes up?
Well, I'm not a real estate expert. so-
I don't want my asset to diminish. Because
Well, I would-
there's a nice looking townhouse to the east of me, and then I have a farm looking house myself, and I do have half an acre, almost half an acre butting up right against it. I don't want my property to diminish because this is a nice property that's gonna go in here.
I understand.
Just a comment.
Okay, thank you. Did you have one more comment, sir?
Sure. Thank you so much. Just two comments on a parking issue, I think. This building is gonna be too big, there's gonna be not enough parking. Just keep in mind, we own a building that's on Ford Road, and we have 30 parking spots over there. We actually have 15 extra than what we need. That's adjacent to this building. So it's on the other side of the alley. So there shouldn't be a problem. And if there's only gonna be 12 units there, and they're allowing us 2 parking spots per unit, so all we need is 24 parking spots. Then we have the street, that's just for guests, but we have the parking on the other side, so that shouldn't be a problem. And as far as the property value, sir, I'm a real estate professional, I've been doing this so many years. Anytime a project like that comes into town, it raises the property value, actually. In essence, it reduces your property taxes in the long term because this property will generate excess property taxes to the city to use for services and so forth. And that spills over to the residential and lowers the millage rate for the residential. But that takes time to do. So anytime there's a new project comes in, that helps actually the residents. And that's how in Dearborn Heights, they all encourage these things because property value went up so high, you can't even buy a shack in Dearborn Heights for $200,000 right now. So if you're living in your house, your property taxes will not gonna go up if it's homestead, and your property value goes up. So when we all retire, we'll all be lucky. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak? Okay. Are there any written communications?
Yes, so we did receive one written communication on this. It is from Jean Ward, so I didn't know if you sent this in case you couldn't make it today. So I can read it into the record if you'd like, or if you think it's a redundancy, it's up.
It's a redundancy.
Okay, so then we have no written communication.
Then we're good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, hearing no other comments, we'll close the public hearing and open it up to the Planning Commission discussion for recommendations. I have one question before we go on. If we should recommend approval of the rezoning, are we also recommending the plot plan that we see before us?
So the way conditional would work is if you recommend approval, the applicant will have to create the actual conditional agreement. Would be a text agreement, go over, some standard language that's required. There we make sure to put language in there about reverting to R1 in case it doesn't get developed, all the different conditions. And typically, I would highly recommend that the rendering be included as within that conditional agreement.
Well, because there might be some portions of this plot plan that I disagree with.
Absolutely, and so what it would be is the conditional rezoning text, the agreement, would state that this is a conceptual rendering that proposes certain to a general layout, and then the only specifics would be actually what the applicant chooses to include in the conditions, and what you would feel and the city council would feel would be appropriate to include. Like, for example, if they felt like the rendering of the elevations were fundamental to the agreement, they could say that the agreement would say the elevations of the new structure shall be substantially compliant and consistent with the rendering on the proposed plot plan. And then when it comes to other items, right now, the main issue would be that the front yard setback as proposed would be on part of it would be 26 feet and a 10-foot setback on the east and west side of the property. And then we could list things like the parking lot should be located to the rear, that sort of thing. But for example, things like the applicant just mentioned, right now they have a dumpster enclosure here, but there's also potential to move that dumpster enclosure and revise it with the existing, with their existing property on the north. So that's an issue that could get finalized and go over in the site plan review. So they still need site plan review, those other details.
Well, you're saying, though, that specifics such as the setbacks and the number of units would be included in the in our approval.
Yes. And then only those details that you feel are appropriate to consider. Because for example, if you're thinking that maybe the screening on the west isn't sufficient just yet, because it's not on here, it's not because of the ordinance. And we just don't address that. And then the agreement would then say, the site plan shall be consistent with all other regulations of the zoning ordinance. So therefore, so when you do
Okay.
site plan review, everything else that's not mentioned in the text must comply.
Okay. Well, moving on then, does anyone have any comments or questions on the commission?
I have a couple of comments. So far as the concern over rats, we have an ordinance in the city that businesses need to maintain the dumpster enclosures with quality gates that are kept closed when they're not being emptied by a waste management company, and that the lids be closed as well all the time when they're not putting refuge into the enclosures. So if that's a problem where you're at, then that's something that can be taken up with the department that handles that, and they can look in to make sure that those things are being complied with. The parking, as I look at this, I'm looking at two residential streets here, and I live on a residential street just a few blocks from here, if that. And I have parking out in front of my house, and generally it's empty almost all the time. But if I'm having a party, a baptism, first communion, a barbecue or anything like that, then I utilize a lot of the on-street parking for my guests. My driveway holds about 4 cars. And looking at this, we have, let's see, we have about 100 foot of frontage on Shatka here, which would pretty much contain about 5 vehicles. And on Pardo, we have 144 feet of residential street there that would contain about another 7 cars. And that doesn't combine with the 15 extra that you talk about, and the property that fronts Ford Road. Seems to me that that would accommodate a great deal of guests in the event that somebody was having a party of one sort or another, or some family event that needed extra parking. So I see this as a very strong improvement to that property. And I'm guessing, having driven through that alley yesterday, one of those drains may be plugged up in that alley, because we have a small lake right adjacent to your property here. That's something that would have to be looked into and could be rectified by cleaning out the drains and whatnot. I think this would be a vast improvement over that corner as it exists now. I'm not really sure what the age of that house is, but I would kind of guess that that may date back to the 20s or possibly early 30s. And the house right now looks the best that it's looked in about the last 20 years. It's been cleaned up considerably around the alley and the adjacent area around the house. But this would be a vast, vast improvement over what I see there. I would ask one thing, that if we approve this, that you try and save the 4 trees that are like in a group on Pardo. There's a lot of scrub trees.
I think some of that is our property.
We have, there's 3 on one side and there's 2 on the other, which is.
Okay, maybe, then I guess they'll be preserved if it's on your property.
Because there's a nice walnut trees.
Okay,
Please.
We definitely will, we'll try.
I think those,
And the
they are
squirrels will
within
like
a
it too.
26-foot setback. from
Squirrels
the
will like it too.
Pardo.
Yeah.
They're up front, they're not further into the property, so we might not need to take them down, and it's better because it costs a lot of money to take them down. So
Yeah.
just keep them there.
so far as the setbacks, for such a quality looking improvement to the property as this, 4 foot on the front seems pretty insignificant to me. I wouldn't have a problem with that. That's my comment.
Any other comments or questions?
No.
Well, my only issue, it's our turn now, sir. My only issue is with the size of the building requiring the setbacks that you're asking for. First of all, we don't have authority to grant different setbacks, I don't believe.
Well, it's, the state law that allows for the conditional rezoning allows the applicant to propose conditions. And in my experience, we have, in other communities, we have allowed for that kind of modification of standards. And it's, the way the state law is written is that the applicant can request it, and then it's up to the city to determine if they're comfortable with those proposed modifications.
Well, by the city, do you mean the ZBA or
Well, no, well, in this particular case, it would be the planning commission and then the city council, because it's tied to the conditional rezoning. If there were conditions.
So you're saying that we can disregard the ordinance?
No, that the state law allows for conditions and modifications to the standards.
The standard being our ordinance?
Of the ordinance, yeah. And it's only if you are comfortable with those modifications that you allow it, that you make your decision on the conditional rezoning based on those modifications. If you're not comfortable with those modifications, then you can recommend, you can motion that way and recommend denial. But if you're comfortable with them, then you could. If you prefer that they go through the variance process rather than just allow it as conditions, that's another alternative. But in my experience, I have dealt with this in other communities, and they have allowed for variations in density and setbacks as part of their conditional rezoning. So it's an option.
Well,
Only, and once again, an option only if you and the council are comfortable.
all right, well, as I see it, the building would fit perfectly well. I'm not too concerned with the 4 feet we're taking off on the front setback, but cutting down the 20-foot setback from the building on the west side between the residential property to 10 feet, and then actually with the parking lot is also supposed to have a 20-foot setback, and that's down to about 5 feet. Although there would be a required masonry wall there. But I believe if the building was reduced to 10 units instead of 12, it would alleviate that problem with the setbacks, and that would be, in my view, a preferable way to go. I do like the concept, and I like the appearance of your rendering, and in that respect, I support the concept, but I can't support ignoring the ordinance between the residential property setback. So I would have a hard time supporting that.
May I speak?
Yes, you can speak.
If you take, the reason we're asking to shrink the setback by 10 feet and 10 feet is to build the 12 units. If you take it back to 20 feet, it's gonna have to be 8 units, and we're not gonna build it because it's not
Well,
gonna make it.
I think if you eliminate 2 units off the end, that, I assume that
They're back.
those 2 units are about 20 feet?
Well, you got
wide?
6 units, 20 feet each. That's 120 feet. And you got 10-foot setback and 10-foot setback, that's 140 feet.
Well,
That's it.
if you cut the 2 off the one end, that gives you 20 feet, so you can add that 10 feet on each end and regain that 20-foot
You
setback.
can't because they're back to back. If you lose 2 units here, you lost the 2 units in the parking lot
Well,
facing the
no,
alley.
I'm just saying you lose one in the front and one in the back.
It won't work because you're shrinking the building this way. That means you're taking 2 from the back and 2 from the front. You have no choice because the setback is this way. So I'm losing 4 units. If I lose 4 units, we can't build it.
Well, I'm not suggesting you lose 4, I'm just suggesting you lose 2.
2 on the Shaka side.
It won't work because the building's set sideways from this street to here, and this is Pardo. When you shrink it this way, you're taking 1 unit from here and 1 unit from here, and the ones in the back, you're taking 1 unit from here and 1 unit from here. You have no choice because the setback's gonna be 20 feet from here to here, 20 feet from here to here. That leaves you 4 units here and 4 units here. That's 8 units.
You can just take 2 off one end and slide the whole building down a little bit, and you'll have 20 feet setback on both ends. Because you already have 10 feet.
Mario,
We're not.
we went over it with the architects so many times back and forth, and there is no way. I even tried to set the building facing that way, not Pardo, and it wouldn't work.
Well,
It just,
I'm not suggesting
because they're
that you
20 feet,
reorient the building.
they're only 20 feet wide. We're going 20 feet wide and we're going up and down.
That's
it.
all we need to regain is 20 feet.
So you
So we
want,
have, and we take that 20 feet and put 10 feet on each end of the building, slide the building over so it's centered,
so the setback stays 20 feet by 20
so it would
feet.
still be 20 feet on each end. The west and the east would have a 20-foot setback.
Then you end up with eight units. There's no way. you can't end up with
That
more than,
doesn't, I'm not taking 4 units off, I'm only taking 2 units off.
you're taking 10 foot from this side and 10 foot from this side, which means you're taking another
I'm
10 foot
taking
from this
10
side, 10
I'm
foot from
taking
this
20
side.
feet off one side.
So we'll keep the setback on the west 20 feet and the one on Chotka 10 feet?
No,
What I'm saying is with a 10-foot building, with a 10-unit building footprint, the width of the building will be
100.
And then you just shift that building westbound 10 feet. So it'll be 20 feet of setback, 100 feet of building, 20 feet of setback. That's what they're just, that's what
The
they're.
architect, we went over it, and it's impossible. Even a 10 unit, it doesn't make economical sense. I mean, it won't work. Because
So that,
we're $175
I
a unit.
understand you're gonna make more money with the 12
No,
unit.
no, I'm not gonna make more money. It just, I'm gonna lose money if I build it. Why would I do it? I just turn it into a parking lot and that's it. The thing is, this building is costing $175 a square foot. At minimum 12,000 square feet. We're talking about $2.5 million injected right into that project. Plus everything else that goes around with it, that's another $200,000. Talking about $2.7 million. Why would I do that? I can go to Birmingham and buy 10 units for $2 million. The only reason we want this, because it's right behind our building. It makes sense to us to control it, and we live down the street. That's the only reason. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. I mean, 10 unit won't make it. 8 unit, it's impossible. We can go broke, 8 units. Because the cost is the cost. It's there, it's fixed. Once they dig it up, it's a cost. When they're building 12 unit and building 8 unit, it's gonna cost me the same. But when I build 12 units, it makes economical sense because the return on that is different. We went over that so many times. I've been at it for the past 8 months, back and forth, you know. That's the only reason we're asking for the setback. We're not asking for it just to have a piece extra grass there. We're asking for it so we can put the building at 12 units. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Steenberg.
The other day, I walked the block from Merriman Road to Henry Ruff, and there are 3 one-block sections in between that area. And on the most westerly block, there are 5 apartment buildings of various sizes. Some considerably larger than this and some smaller. And there's 1 residential house. I'm not sure, Mario, do you happen to know what the setback between the 5 units that are off of Merriman Road and the 1 residential house that sits at the end of that block? Before.
I don't know, but I can find out in a second.
Okay. But in those 3 block areas, there's 5 apartment buildings, several of considerable size, I believe bigger than this footprint, and 1 residential house. Then in the 2nd block east, there are none except what you're proposing. Then in the 3rd block, there are 2 right on the end, side by side, next to Henry Ruff. Overall, this looks like it would be a perfect fit in that immediate area for the simple fact that we already have 7 apartment units in that immediate area. And when I walked that, I went to the other side of Ford Road with my car, and I drove up and down that same stretch. And for whatever reason, in the development of Garden City over the past many, many decades, it seems that all the apartment buildings have been built 1 street off of Ford Road, to the north and to the south. And that's pretty much true from Vinoy all the way down to Harrison. And then it starts to change at Harrison. But for that several miles, all those areas just north of Ford and just south of Ford, by one street, there are an awful lot of apartment buildings, and that's where all the concentration in the city primarily lies. And I'm curious about the setback, because I'm trying to remember, it seems to me it was pretty close, but I don't recall dimensionally what.
So, Fearing, what location are we looking at here?
We're looking at Merriman Road and Pardo as you head east from there. There are 5 apartment complexes that take up the entire block except for one small residential unit at the end. And I'm curious what the distance between the two are, because that's what I'm looking at so far as these setback requirements. Apparently for Mario, we do seem to have some latitude. I'm curious what that distance is.
So it looks like it's about 12 to 15 feet, because it's about the width of the dry line. There's a drive between the property line that separates the single-family home from the apartment building. So there's the apartment building, their drive aisle, property line, and then the single-family home. And that distance between the apartment building structure itself and the property line looks like it'd be about 15 feet.
So that drive aisle is for the apartments, if I'm not
That's
mistaken.
correct.
So from the property line, the drive aisle is owned by the property owners of the apartment. So from that drive aisle to the house is what, 5 feet or less?
Well, that's not where you measure the setback. You measure it from the building.
Yes.
Okay.
So then measuring the distance of the single-family structure from its footprint to the side lot line that it shares with the property, with the apartment building, that's about 20 feet.
Okay.
So there is a significant distance in there, but not that, I don't know if it matters or not, but the person that owns the apartment building also owns a single-family home.
Oh, okay.
And they've attempted several times to come in trying to find ways to modify that single-family home for multiple tenants, because in case you didn't notice, that was damaged by a tree during the tornado a while ago.
Right through the living room.
Yeah, right through the front room, and then it took forever for them to get it. We had to encourage them to apply for a permit to renovate the building in there, so it's just taking the process.
Okay.
Okay, well, let's move on with this. I think we've heard all sides, so does someone want to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve,
Recommend approval?
recommend approval for this rezoning with the conditional setbacks as discussed in the plan of 10 and 10 and 26. 26 being the front and 10 being the sides. I think with a masonry wall between the residential and the fact that the other setback abuts a residential, an existing residential street, I don't see either one of the reductions in those areas as being at all problematic.
And your request was to include the plot plan in the conditional rezoning?
Yes.
Okay, is there support?
Support.
Okay, any comments or questions on the motion?
So, do you want me to read it to you? So this is to recommend council approval of conditional rezoning with the conditional setbacks of 10 feet on the east, 10 feet on the west, 26 feet to the front, and to include plot plan with submission to council.
Correct.
Okay, you want to take roll?
Commissioner Steenberg?
Aye.
Commissioner Walls?
Aye.
Commissioner Mativier?
Aye.
Chairperson May?
Nay. So,
Motion
your
passes
motion has
3-1.
passed. And now it goes to the city council for their decision with our recommendation. And you can contact Mr. Ortega for any further information. Thank you for your help. I do say that I think it's a very nice-looking project.
I might just move in there.
I wouldn't blame you.
Welcome back to Garden City.
Yep.
Thank you, good luck. When do you propose breaking ground if this passes muster with council?
Well, hopefully soon, we're going to start working on the plans now with the architect. Hopefully soon.
Okay, great,
As soon as it starts forming up.
good luck. I think one of the things that really helps this work together is the fact that you bought the property to the north there, and you have the additional parking in that lot, and that you've already upgraded that, and you're gonna fill it with 2 more retail spaces. I think that works together very, very well.
Thinking of the residents about the dumpster and all that, so we might not put a dumpster in this new project. We'll keep it in the other one and enclose it so we have one dumpster.
Yeah, you may have greater room there.
I'm sure that would be preferable to your neighbors.
Yeah, just keep it to us for.
And
Yeah.
also, you know, in placing that, you might consider how they approach the dumpster, because the alley will remain open. And we'll have to get the city to take a look at the drainage of the alley there. And, yeah. Yeah, it's been getting cleaned up over the last few years. It has a little more to go.
We'll make sure we'll keep those 2 trees just for you.
Thank you again.
Okay, good luck, thank you.
Okay, folks, we still have a meeting here, so if you don't mind.
But you don't need us anymore. We're good to
No.
go. Thank you.
Good night. Okay, next item is other business. Do we have any other business, Mario?
None at this time, but just to let you know, some information coming down the road. We do have an application for apartment building.
For what?
An apartment building,
Oh.
brand new apartment building on Crowder, east of Marion. These would be the 2 vacant lots that were previously utilized as parking spaces for the bar 153.
Okay.
So the applicant has submitted a plan. They were too late to get on the March meeting, so they'll be on the April meeting. The site will, as proposed, they're gonna require some variances. So that's just something that's coming up on the agenda. And then, just in terms of development in the city, things going on, I don't know if you noticed, but the Sheer Dimensions building adjacent to the Town and Country hardware store has been demolished.
Yeah.
Because they did receive site plan approval from you. They were working to get Wayne County approvals for that site development, but they have now received that. We're getting ready to have a pre-construction meeting between our engineer and building official, myself, and the applicant's construction crew, just to go over final information and coordination as they begin construction of the new multi-tenant building there.
Was any work approval given for the Dunkin' Donuts property?
So that was gonna be my next item going down the street, is that the Dunkin' Donuts property, I've had multiple contacts with their engineer, but they've yet to submit any official plans. The latest concept was they believe the square footage they need for the Dunkin' Donuts would allow them to have a 2-tenant building on that site instead of a drive-through for the Dunkin' Donuts. So half the building would be Dunkin' Donuts, the other half would be leasable space for another tenant. But I have not seen any site plans, so I don't know what kind of configuration they're doing, but they're working with professionals. So hopefully they design it correctly. But we shall see. Trying to think about things, just to move down the street. No, nothing else. Nothing that springs to mind right away in terms of other new construction. Oh, and then actually, 326604, it's a Ford address. but it is on Hubbard. It is the old Dearborn Gage building. It has been redeveloped for a medical marijuana facility. They are in the midst of receiving the final permits from us, the city, and then they need to submit other paperwork to the building department to receive the final certificate of occupancy. Once they receive that, then that is the, what state Cannabis Regulatory Agency requires to do their final inspections to do medical marijuana. The state will come down, they'll inspect the site, they have very rigorous standards, but they will be inspected, and then we'll go through the other final processes for their building permit, their licenses, their business license, not that we already have their final building permit. And then they will potentially be able to open soon as a medical marijuana facility. The other medical marijuana facility, it's brand new construction on industrial, that has responded to our repeated requests to submit revised building plans, so their building plans are now being updated to compliance with all ordinance standards, and then they will, in theory, begin the construction process once they are issued a building permit. And then finally, just to let you know, at the direction of City Council, work has begun with town attorneys that are experts in marijuana regulations, and so there's a potential for amendments to the police powers ordinance for marijuana regulations and also the zoning ordinance for marijuana regulations. And so they would, the changes to the marijuana regulations and zoning ordinance would come before you. And right now, as directed by City Council, the amendments would move towards putting more of the regulatory statute requirements of marijuana uses in the police powers ordinance. So it would be in City Council's purview, a lot more of the details that have normally been under the zoning ordinance. So they're considering allowing for widening the types of marijuana facilities that could be located in the city. So that's just to bring you up to speed on that, and because that might be on your agenda in the near future.
Okay, was there anything else?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Commissioners' comments regarding planning and zoning matters. Eric, nothing? Mike?
On the development we just talked about, he said the front structure was going to be retail hair salon. What did he say the other one was?
It's a security consultant's office.
Okay.
So they do installation of security systems for our different businesses and homes, and then that's the contractor's office where he meets with clients to go over contracts and that sort of thing.
Okay. That's
It's
all,
on the-
thank you.
Its entrance is on the side, it's on the shop side, facing the.
Right.
Yeah.
Facing the car repair.
The heating and cooling supplier was there,
Correct.
yeah.
So the parking for the hair salon, that would be over on the apartment side,
That's correct.
yeah, part of that 15,
Right.
That he
a
was
little
talking about?
ambitious of you guys, yes.
yeah.
But there are some.
There's actually two additional.
There might be some reconfiguration necessary in that parking space, because, for example, there's the ordinances, I don't know if you've seen some of the new parking lots that have been constructed, are compliant with the ordinance, which require landscaping in front. So that currently missing, that will be required when it gets reconstructed.
Okay.
Also, to the side of that building, the curb cuts in on the Shotka side. There's a cut in there where you can park two cars
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
adjacent to the road, but not on the road.
okay,
I guess that was to accommodate the heating and cooling contractor that was there. He sold parts.
yeah,
So that's
Jason's?
like, yeah, that was like two more spots there
oh,
that are off the road, but right adjacent to the road.
yeah.
Yeah.
Randy, anything?
Nothing.
Brian?
Nothing tonight.
Okay. Well, our next regular planning commission meeting is Thursday, April 13th, 2023, If we have no other business, I'll declare the meeting adjourned. Have a good night.
Good job, guys.